Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring measures. My name is Reed Callahan. At 56 years old, I had spent 18 years as a senior captain for Altus Air, operating out of Salt Lake City. 18 years of flawless safety records. 18 years of punctual departures. 18 years of mentoring the next generation of pilots who would carry our airline into the future. Lyle Pearson, our newly appointed operations manager, delivered the news without ever making eye contact. His hands stayed folded on his polished desk, fingers tapping against a spreadsheet that, apparently, now measured my value to the company. Your compensation package is no longer aligned with our growth model, he continued, finally glancing up. The severance details are outlined in this envelope. I accepted the manila folder without opening it. Through the window behind him, I could see one of our Boeing 737s taxiing toward the runway, the early morning sun reflecting off its wings. Flight 2243 to Denver. Jacob Peters would be in the captain's seat today. I had signed off on his captain certification just 3 years ago. Is there anything else? I asked, keeping my tone steady. Lyle shook his head, already turning his attention back to the computer. Human Resources will handle the exit procedures. They're expecting you downstairs. I stood, straightened my uniform jacket out of habit, and walked to the door. 18 years dissolved in a 3-minute meeting. No questions about who would inherit my training responsibilities. No concern for the 6 flight instructors I supervised. No recognition of the loyalty I had cultivated among the crew. Captain Callahan, Lyle called as I reached for the door handle. We'll need your uniform returned before you leave the building. I nodded without turning around and stepped into the hallway, where Ellen from HR was already waiting, clipboard in hand, her expression deliberately neutral. As we walked toward the elevator, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Thomas Wright, one of my first officers. Is it true? News traveled fast in an airline. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without replying and followed Ellen to the processing room, where I would relinquish my badge, keys, and a uniform I had worn with pride for nearly 2 decades. In the locker room, I changed into civilian clothes and folded my uniform with military precision, a habit ingrained during my Air Force years. As I placed my captain's hat on top of the pile, I noticed a small photograph taped inside my locker, my first crew at Altus, standing proudly beside our aircraft. Most of them were captains now, commanding their own flights. They had no idea their former instructor had just been grounded. I began flying at 19, scraping together enough money for lessons by working nights at an airport refueling station. By 25, I had earned my commercial license and was flying cargo routes across the Midwest. The Air Force came next, 11 years of service that took me from training flights to combat missions. When I joined Altus Air at 38, I brought that same discipline and precision with me. In those early years, Altus was expanding, eager for experienced pilots to grow its operations. Harold Winters, the founder, had recruited me personally, recognizing the value of military training. Build me the best damn flight crew in the industry, he had said. And for 18 years, that's exactly what I did. I trained them all. Young pilots fresh from flight school, military transfers transitioning to commercial aviation. Every captain who had earned their 4th stripe in the past decade had spent time with me in the simulator, sweating through emergency scenarios and complex landing procedures. We built something meaningful, a reputation for excellence and safety that made Altus the go-to airline for business travelers and families alike. Then Harold retired 3 years ago. His son Jeffrey stepped in as CEO, bringing with him consultants and efficiency specialists who knew spreadsheets far better than they knew aviation. The first changes were subtle: reduced training hours, shorter turnaround times, fewer reserve crews. Small compromises that improved the numbers but increased pressure on operations. Lyle Pearson came on board 6 months ago to optimize flight operations. He had never piloted anything more complex than a rental car, but he had an MBA and a mandate to reduce expenses. The warning signs were there. Senior personnel started disappearing, replaced by contract pilots earning lower wages. Training budgets were slashed. When I voiced my concerns about declining safety margins at a management meeting last month, Lyle smiled thinly and said, "We're aligning resource allocation with industry standards." My phone buzzed again as I exited the HR office. A message from Catherine Reynolds, our chief flight instructor. Meeting in the pilot's lounge. Now, I should have gone straight home. I should have taken the severance and walked away with dignity. Instead, I found myself riding the elevator back up to the third floor. 8 pilots were waiting in the lounge when I arrived. Thomas Wright, Catherine Reynolds, and 6 others. All captains I had trained, all with the same look of barely contained fury. "Is it true?" Thomas asked again. I gave a single nod. Effective immediately. The room fell silent. They said it was a restructuring decision. I explained, keeping my tone even. "Nothing personal, just business." Catherine snorted. "Nothing personal? You've been here longer than half the management team's been out of college." "What are you planning to do?" asked Daniel Cooper, a senior captain who had served as my first officer for 5 years before earning his promotion. I shrugged. "Take some time off. Think about my options." The words sounded hollow, even in my own ears. "This isn't right," Thomas said. He was pacing now, moving between the windows that overlooked the tarmac. "You're the foundation of our training program. Half the pilots at this airline wouldn't have their wings without you." "The decision's been finalized," I replied. "There's no sense in fighting it. I appreciate the support, but you all have flights to get ready for." Catherine crossed her arms. "My next flight isn't until tomorrow, and I'm seriously thinking about calling in sick." The others murmured in agreement, but I shook my head. "Don't jeopardize your careers. That's not what I want." As I turned to go, my phone rang. The screen showed Harold Winter's name. I stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Reed, I just heard." Harold's voice was tight with frustration. "Jeffrey told me it was a mutual decision, that you were ready to retire." "Not quite," I said, watching through the glass as the pilots continued their animated discussion in the lounge. "This isn't the airline I built," Harold said. "This isn't how we treat our people, especially not someone who's given so much to Altus." "It's not your company anymore, Harold." There was a long pause. "No, it's not. But I still have influence in this industry. Victor Chen over at Skyward Global has been searching for someone to rebuild their training division." Interested, Skyward Global was a fast-growing charter airline specializing in corporate and luxury travel. They had a strong reputation and deep pockets. "I might be," I admitted, "but I just walked out the door. I need some time." "Take the weekend," Harold said. "I'll arrange a meeting for Monday morning." As I ended the call, I saw Lyle Pearson heading quickly toward the pilot's lounge, his face flushed with irritation. Through the glass, I noticed more pilots had joined the original group. At least 15 now, all in uniform, all looking grim. Something shifted inside me. For 18 years, I had given everything to Altus Air. Perfect attendance, holiday shifts, late-night emergency call-ins. I had constructed the training framework from scratch, developed safety protocols that became industry benchmarks, and personally guided dozens of pilots. And they tossed me aside in a 3-minute meeting with a manila envelope. I walked back into the lounge just as Lyle entered from the other side. "Don't you all have flights to prepare for?" he demanded. No one moved. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me instead. Waiting. I made a decision. "Actually," I said quietly, "I think we need to talk about crew safety concerns." Lyle's expression hardened. "Captain Callahan is no longer employed by Altus Air. Any safety issues should be submitted through the appropriate channels." "You mean through you?" Catherine asked, her voice calm and dangerously composed. The same tone I'd heard during high-stress flights. The same person who cut our simulator training hours by 30% last month. Lyle adjusted his tie. "Those changes were based on efficiency metrics and industry norms." "Those changes endanger flights," Daniel interjected. "And now you're letting go of the one person who's been compensating for your cuts by putting in extra hours with less experienced pilots." I raised a hand before it escalated further. "This isn't about me. It's about protocols and proper training. These pilots have valid concerns. They can submit them through the appropriate channels," Lyle repeated, glancing at his watch. "Right now, they have schedules to stick to. Flight 3176 to Chicago boards in 40 minutes. Flight 2240 to Phoenix in 1 hour. Still, no one moved. That's my flight to Chicago, Thomas said. And I'm not comfortable taking off until these safety matters are addressed. A muscle twitched in Lyle's jaw. You are contractually obligated to fly your assigned routes. Unless there are real safety issues, I replied. Federal aviation rules are clear on that. Lyle's eyes narrowed. Is this your move, Callahan? Trying to stir up trouble on your way out? I'm simply supporting legitimate concerns raised by your pilots, I said evenly. As a certified flight instructor, I have a professional responsibility, regardless of my employment status. The standoff held for a few tense seconds until Lyle pulled out his phone. I'm calling Jeffrey. While he stepped aside to make the call, the pilots gathered closer around me. What's the strategy here, Reed? Catherine asked in a hushed tone. No strategy, I answered truthfully. Just making sure your voices are heard. But something was forming in that room. A collective pushback I hadn't expected. More pilots were arriving, drawn by the text messages circulating among the crew. The lounge was getting crowded. Lyle returned, a smug expression on his face. Jeffrey's on his way. In the meantime, all pilots are instructed to report for their scheduled departures. Immediately. Or what? Asked James Bennett, a veteran captain who had transferred from United around the same time I joined Altus. Or you'll face disciplinary measures, Lyle snapped. Possibly termination. James laughed, a sharp sound in the heavy silence. I've got 27 years of clean flight records and 14 years at this airline. You want to explain to the board why you're firing senior captains during peak summer travel season? The elevator doors opened and Jeffrey Winters entered. His tailored suit stood in stark contrast to the uniforms surrounding him. At 35, he resembled a younger, less experienced version of his father, lacking Harold's warmth and aviation insight. What's going on here? He demanded, surveying the room. Your pilots have safety concerns, I said before Lyle could respond. Issues that have been consistently ignored for months. Jeffrey's expression tightened. Reed, you're no longer employed here. This doesn't involve you. It involves anyone who cares about flight safety, I replied, and anyone who might board one of your aircraft. He turned to address the pilots directly. I understand there may be some loyalty to Captain Callahan, but this is strictly a business decision, nothing more. His gaze swept across the room. Now, I need everyone to return to their responsibilities immediately. No one moved. This is insubordination, Jeffrey warned. Catherine stepped forward. No, sir. This is an official safety stand-down initiated by concerned flight crew members, as permitted under federal aviation guidelines and our union contract. Jeffrey's face reddened. Fine. You have 1 hour to submit your concerns in writing to Lyle. After that, everyone returns to their scheduled flights. As he turned to walk out, he paused beside me. You're making a mistake, he said under his breath. I could have made this transition smooth for you. This isn't about me, I repeated. But deep down, we both knew that wasn't entirely true. The pilots gathered in the briefing room, quickly compiling a detailed list of safety concerns. It wasn't difficult. They had been accumulating for months. Reduced simulator time, compressed turnaround windows that left insufficient time for thorough pre-flight checks, maintenance issues that were reported but then postponed, pressure to minimize fuel loads to cut costs. I sat quietly toward the back, offering input when needed, but mostly just observing the natural coordination of the team I had trained. They were precise, focused, and diligent, everything I had taught them to be. While they worked, I stepped outside to make a call. Victor Chun. The voice was sharp and authoritative. Mr. Chun, this is Reed Callahan. Harold Winters recommended I reach out. Captain Callahan, Victor said, his tone shifting warmly. Harold spoke very highly of you. Extremely highly. I gather Altus has made a significant miscalculation. That's one way to describe it. I have a proposal for you, Victor continued. But first, fill me in. Harold mentioned some pilot unrest. I gave him a quick rundown of the situation. Interesting, Victor said when I finished. And not surprising. Listen, I need to make some calls. Can you meet tomorrow instead of Monday? I can meet whenever you like. Perfect. In the meantime, don't sign anything from Altus. No severance packages. No non-competes. Nothing. Can you promise that? Yes. Excellent. I'll follow up with the details. When I returned to the briefing room, the atmosphere had shifted. The pilots were gathered tightly around Catherine's laptop, their faces serious. What's going on? I asked. Daniel gestured me over. We were compiling documents to back our safety concerns. Catherine discovered something in the system. Catherine rotated the screen so I could view it. It displayed a series of maintenance logs for aircraft in the Altus fleet. Logs showing discrepancies between original entries and final versions. These were modified, she explained. Issues flagged as critical were downgraded to advisory. Mandatory service intervals were pushed beyond a manufacturer's recommendations. I scrolled through the files, each one deepening my concern. How long has this been happening? For what I can access, about 4 months, Catherine replied. Right after they launched the new maintenance management software. The software Lyle swore would boost efficiency, Thomas added. This wasn't just budget trimming. It was hazardous, possibly criminal. We need to add this to the report, I said. Already done, Catherine confirmed. But Reed, this isn't only about safety anymore. This is fraud. These logs go to the FAA. The door opened, and Jeffrey entered with Lyle and 2 men I didn't recognize. Your hour is up, Jeffrey said flatly. Lyle will review your concerns and handle them accordingly. In the meantime, these gentlemen are from company security. They'll escort Captain Callahan off the premises. Catherine shut her laptop and stood up. We're not finished. Yes, you are, Jeffrey responded coldly. All pilots must proceed to their assigned flights now or face termination for job abandonment. Did you know about the maintenance logs? I asked him directly. Jeffrey's expression remained unchanged, but I caught a flicker in his eyes. I don't know what you're referring to. The altered maintenance reports, the ones sent to the FAA with severe issues downplayed, I said. Lyle stepped forward quickly. That's a very serious allegation, completely unsupported and irrelevant to the current discussion. We have proof, Catherine said. Both versions of the reports. Jeffrey and Lyle exchanged a look, one that said everything. This meeting is over, Jeffrey declared. Security will stay here until all pilots report for duty. As the guard approached me, I saw Thomas discreetly slide Catherine's laptop into his flight bag. Whatever was coming, the evidence was safe. And in that moment, it became clear this wasn't just about me being pushed out. It was about eliminating anyone who might expose what they were hiding. The guards walked me to my car in the employee parking lot. As we made our way, my phone vibrated with a message from Victor Chun. Meeting confirmed. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Skyward, Global Headquarters. Once I was alone in my car, I dialed Harold Winters. It's worse than we thought, I told him. They've been doctoring maintenance logs. Harold's sharp breath on the other end said it all. That explains the sudden spike in profit margins Jeffrey's been flaunting, he said. They're cutting corners on safety. The pilots have the proof, I told him. But Jeffrey's threatening to fire anyone who doesn't fly. Where are you now? Parking lot. They just walked me out. Good. Stay far away from the terminal. I'll make some calls. I drove back to my empty house, divorced for 3 years, my daughter away at college on the East Coast, and waited. Within an hour, my phone lit up with a series of messages. Thomas, Flight 3176 to Chicago canceled. Mechanical problems. Catherine, 2240 to Phoenix grounded. Crew unavailable. James, Denver route canceled. Same situation across the board. One by one, Altus pilots were finding reasons not to fly. It wasn't an organized strike. Doing so would violate union rules without the proper procedures, but rather a collection of individual decisions based on their professional judgment and legitimate safety concerns. By evening, the Altus website displayed dozens of cancellations. Then, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Captain Callahan, this is Lisa Brennan, FAA Safety Inspector. I understand you may have information regarding falsified maintenance records at Altus Air. I do, I said, but I'm not the primary source. You should speak with Catherine Reynolds, their chief flight instructor. We're in the process of doing that, Inspector Brennan replied. In the meantime, would you be willing to give a formal statement? Absolutely. The next morning, I arrived at Skyward Global's headquarters 15 minutes early. The sleek, modern building gleamed in the early sun, the company's signature blue and silver logo proudly displayed. Victor Chen personally met me in the lobby, an unusual move for a CEO of a rising airline. He was around my age, offering a firm handshake and a steady gaze. "Thank you for coming, Captain," he said, guiding me toward the elevator. "We have a lot to talk about." In the upstairs conference room, he got straight to the matter. "Altair is in serious trouble," Victor began. "The FAA launched an investigation last night. Their stock has already started to drop because of it." "I'm not surprised. What might surprise you is that we've been monitoring Altus for a while. Their cost-cutting strategy created an opportunity for us. We've been preparing to grow our pilot team to compete more directly with them on premium routes." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an employment contract, complete with a benefits package that exceeded what I had at Altus. "We want you to lead our flight operations and training division," Victor said. "Full autonomy. Build it however you see fit, with safety as the foundation." I glanced through the contract, noting the title, Director of Flight Operations. "There's more," Victor added. "We're ready to offer positions to any qualified Altus pilots who are willing to transition, effective immediately." "How many positions?" I asked. "How many pilots do you trust?" I thought about the faces in the room the day before, the seasoned professionals I had trained and mentored for years. "At least 30, I replied. "Experienced, safety-conscious captains and first officers." Victor grinned. "Perfect. That's exactly what we need to support our expansion plans." Just then, my phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. "FAA investigators at headquarters. All flights grounded pending inspection." I showed Victor the message. "Timing is everything in this business," he said. "Sometimes you just wait for the right moment to act. Like when your competitor fires their most respected pilot and alienates their entire flight team in a single disastrous day." "I accept," I told him, extending my hand. This wasn't a plan for revenge. It was about building something stronger. 3 weeks after I was dismissed, I stood in Skyward Global's newly expanded training facility. It was state-of-the-art, with 6 flight simulators, advanced emergency response equipment, and classrooms outfitted with the latest aviation tools. Victor had stayed true to his word, approving my designs without hesitation. "What do you think?" Victor asked, surveying the space. "It's exactly how I imagined it," I answered. He checked the time. "They should be arriving any minute now." Right on cue, the main doors opened. Catherine Reynolds stepped in first, followed by Thomas, Daniel, and 27 other Altus pilots. All were dressed in civilian clothes, carrying their personal flight bags. "Welcome to Skyward," I said simply. Catherine grinned. "Nice setup, Captain." As the pilots explored the space, Victor pulled me aside. 30 pilots in one day. That makes quite a statement. "They're the best in the field," I replied. My phone rang. It was Harold Winters. "You watching the news?" he asked, without preamble. "No." "What?" "Turn on any business channel." I gestured to Victor, who switched on the large screen in the briefing room. The business network displayed breaking news. Altair stock in free fall, down 46% since the FAA investigation began. A banner at the bottom showed that trading had been temporarily paused. "Jeffrey just resigned," Harold said in my ear. "The board forced him out after the FAA's initial findings." "Lyle's out too. Effective immediately," the news anchor reported. Industry sources confirm that Altair has canceled over 340 flights in the past 3 weeks due to pilot shortages and grounded aircraft. The airline has been forced to lease planes and hire crews from rival carriers at premium rates to keep their main routes operational. Victor turned to the gathered pilots. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of premium aviation." I thought back to Lyle Pearson's condescending remark. "Your compensation is no longer aligned with our growth model." In a way, he had been correct. I was worth more, far more, than what Altus had been paying me. A truth now clearly reflected in the market value of 30 veteran pilots and over 340 canceled flights. Sometimes, the strongest response isn't in words. It's in what you create after you walk away. 6 months later, I stood on the tarmac, watching Skyward's newest aircraft, a sleek Boeing 787 Dreamliner, make its final approach. The jet landed smoothly, reverse thrusters engaging at precisely the right moment. A flawless landing, just as I'd expect from Catherine Reynolds. Skyward Global had grown quickly, launching 16 new routes and claiming a significant share of the premium market once dominated by Altus. Their training system, my training system, was already gaining recognition as the industry benchmark for safety and performance. Harold Winters joined me on the observation deck, eyes fixed on the aircraft as it taxied toward the terminal. Altus's board offered me the CEO position yesterday, he said casually. Asked me to return and clean up the mess. Are you going to take it? Harold shook his head. That chapter's finished. Besides, I'm enjoying retirement. The Dreamliner came to a full stop at the gate. In a few minutes, Catherine and her crew would disembark, having completed another successful international journey. They're sending a representative to meet with you, Harold added. New chairman of the board. They want you back, Reed. Badly. I wasn't surprised. Altus had barely managed to stay afloat, but their public image had taken a severe hit. Restoring it would take seasoned leadership, something they no longer had. What are you going to tell them? Harold asked. Below us, Catherine stepped out from the jet bridge, caught sight of me on the deck, and waved. I'll tell them I'm exactly where I belong, I replied. We watched as the ground crew began preparing the Dreamliner for its next voyage. Tomorrow, I would be back in the captain's seat, flying a charter route to Tokyo, not because Skyward needed me at the controls, but because I had negotiated the right to fly regularly as part of my executive role. Some things you simply don't give up, regardless of your title. You've built something extraordinary here, Harold said. We built it. I corrected him, thinking of the many pilots who had trusted me enough to make the leap. The late afternoon sun reflected off the aircraft's wings, much like it had that morning when I had watched Flight 2243 taxi from Lyle Pearson's office. The difference was now I was exactly where I was meant to be, not grounded, just navigating a better course.